Newly elected to the Marin Women's Hall of Fame is Sylvia Siegel. Sylvia Siegel is our guest right now. We want to talk with her a little bit about her background, her life, and some of the reasons that she has been made one of the 1990 nominees and then indeed electees. Sylvia, it's nice to see you again. You're usually labeled as a consumer advocate, and I guess that makes you pretty proud to have that phrase.
Yes.
Yeah. Notably for what I always remember, for the formation of TURN, the Toward Utilities Rate Normalization.
Isn't that an awkward name?
Mm-hmm.
That name, those words fit the acronym. I was more interested in the acronym. I founded TURN in January of '73, and that was during the first term of Ronald Reagan as governor. And I wanted to turn his appointed Public Utilities Commission to the public interest. And I had to get the incorporation papers in, and I couldn't think of a catchier name. Normalization came up in connection with an accounting problem that we were all involved in at the time.
We'll talk about that a little bit more later on, but I want to find out about you, the beginning of Sylvia Siegel, where you came from, your parents. You were born in, where, Detroit?
In Detroit, Michigan.
Yeah.
I was born in Detroit, Michigan, and went all through school in Detroit and so on. I must tell you, I was a retarded child. I didn't walk or talk until I was 3 years old. I think developmental patterns are usually genetic. My children were slow in walking too.
Tell me about your mother and father, and they came from Russia, I think.
That's correct. They emigrated in, I think it was 1911, and
Were they
to escape pogroms in Russia. And my father was a builder, a very stubborn man. I think I take after him a little bit. Who built gorgeous, high-quality houses and lost all of them in the Depression.
The Depression then affected your life very much. You were a young lady at that time, huh?
Yes. I was, it was very difficult. And literally, there are a lot of families, that, including ours, that didn't have enough to eat. And going to school, going to college was really hard work because I didn't have any money, even though I went to City College and I earned my tuition. I worked for the NYA then every afternoon at the office of the Campfire Girls, which was right near the university. And I went to camp at the Campfire Camp. And that was really my first job out of school. I got $90 for the summer and blew it all on a winter coat because I had wintered the previous 2 winters in a suede jacket, and Detroit gets very cold. So I had this gorgeous camel hair coat with a raccoon collar covering the rags underneath. I never opened the coat.
Tell me about your mother and your brothers and sisters. Your sister was an important part of your life.
Yes, my sister was very helpful. And I don't know if she gave me her hand-me-downs. I don't think she had too many either. My sister worked at the Metropolitan Life as a typist, earned $17.50 a week, and supported the family on that. So she was very generous and very helpful.
We're just always looking for ways one woman's life affects another. And you know, that pattern that goes on and on. Your mother, now your father was very important in your life, of course, but your mother, did she work, or was she in any way?
No, my mother was a housewife. She was a superb cook, and she used to sew all our clothes when we were small children, I remember. She was a fantastic housekeeper. I just don't understand how she could ever do that. Clean the house, wash all the windows, cook a huge Friday night dinner, bake 3 pies, etc., all in one day.
This is not anything you particularly like to do.
Well, I sure don't like to wash windows and clean the house, and I don't know how to bake.
Yeah.
I am, or I was a good cook. I love to cook because I love to eat.
Yeah.
So,
Do you suppose growing up in Detroit, which in those times, the Depression and a bit later, it seems to me, I recall it being the center of many union organizing and
Right.
all sorts of labor things. Did that affect you in any way?
you bet it did. Detroit was a hot labor town. I remember I used to cut classes at Wayne to go walk on the picket line of the UAW. I came to San Francisco because I knew I wouldn't like Los Angeles. I had been there. And I just had to leave Detroit. I had outgrown it. And so I just came here, and I just thought I'd make my way.
You
And I
knew
did.
nobody here? Or?
I knew nobody here. I didn't have a place to live. This was sort of wartime. A friend of mine was stationed here, and he knew 2 gals who had moved out here and had an apartment. So somehow I got a bed to sleep there for a few months and so on. Mm-hmm. And I pounded the pavements in San Francisco for 3 months until I got a job. And that was a marvelous experience. I just couldn't imagine that you go to call on people and they don't have a job, but they call up their friends to see if the friends have a job. So they were all so gracious and pleasant. It was just a lot of fun. The first job I got here was working for the World Labor Board. Okay. And I got a job as a research clerk, I think, in the research department. And then after 6 months, I got promoted to a wage rate analyst.
Now, long about this time, you must have met the man who was to become your husband.
And when I met him, I was, I had left the War Labor Board, and I was working for the Nurses Association. And that developed into a big thing that turned into a lot more work than I had originally counted on. And it was very strenuous and demanding and exciting and so on. And after 7 years or so, I left there because my husband wasn't very pleased with my getting telephone calls at all hours of the day and night. And so I went from there to the American Cancer Society and worked for 2 years as a general field representative, supervising 9 central counties. And until a month before my first child was born. And then I stopped working.
And you stayed home with the children.
And I stayed home with that child, and then I quickly had another child. And I had 4 years of sloshing diapers, etc.
But you smile so nicely when you say that. You don't look back on that as a terrible time at all, do you?
No, as a matter of fact, my husband did the laundry, but...
To go back for just a moment to your educational side, I forgot that you had some study in the law, didn't you?
Well, I went to law school for a year, and I had to go at night because I was working full-time, and I felt guilty about leaving my family 4 nights a week, so I would dash home from work, get dinner on the table, grab a sandwich, eat it on the car going back to school in the city, and so on. And finally I decided this was no life, and furthermore, the more I learned about the law, the more I felt I would be restricted and hampered from saying what only I could say, and the way I could say it.
You've started toward utility rate. Give me the beginning of this organization that you've become so well known for. I mean, the organization itself, beyond your interest in the whole field.
After I worked for the Association of California Consumers, and we got it going for a couple of years, then the board decided to move to Sacramento because they really wanted to focus on the legislature. Well, by then I was hooked. So even though the association moved out from under me, I continued as an individual advocate. I wrote pleadings, I went to the hearings, I did all of that out of my grocery money because I had to go to the hearings every day, pay the bridge toll and so on. It was still very exciting. But finally I decided you really had to have troops behind you. So I got a foundation grant of $1,500 was the first one. We developed some wonderful testimony that resulted in landmark decision here in California and really was a leading rate reform in the country, where the rate structure was turned around so that instead of getting a discount for the more you use, you paid more on the basis, on the economic basis that discounted rates encouraged more usage, which caused more costs that the company couldn't cover.
I can't figure that out.
Well, sure you can.
It's all right.
If the company doesn't cover their costs, they're going to have to keep raising rates.
Oh, all right.
And they keep raising them all the time. So this way they don't, because you can serve it. And as a part of that first block of the rate structure, we established a lifeline rate.
Yes, well, now we all know about
Now
lifeline
you all know
rates.
about
Sure.
lifeline rates, right?
Sure.
So that guaranteed a minimum amount of gas and electric at reasonable rates.
I remember I used to be a newscaster on the air, and now and then I'd say, well, let's call Sylvia Siegel because she's always good for a story. And this is true. You always are. You always had some phrase or some new thing that you were working on.
Juice.
Juice.
It was juicy.
Right.
If you can't be juicy, nobody's going to listen to you. And see, it would drive the utilities nuts. They'd call me flamboyant, and I exaggerated and so on, but that's not so. I just try to make it understandable and juicy so people would remember it.
I looked up some of the phrases that have been used about you. Outrageous, tenacious,
True.
tireless, tough, watchdog for the little guy, dramatic, and a master at showbiz.
You bet.
Never boring, though, Sylvia. You're never boring.
Let me tell you, Wanda, going back to the nurses, I was fighting for a wage increase for them before the county, and this was post-polio time, but several nurses public health nurses had gotten polio. I arranged to fill that whole chambers with nurses in white uniform, and some of the public health nurses with their paraphernalia. And at the proper moment, I had 3 nurses in wheelchairs who had contracted polio on their job wheel down the center aisle. Well, of course, the cameras were flashing. You have to be kind of a ham. You have to do something like that in order to get the attention of the media. If you can't talk in this ridiculous language, nobody understands it.
Yeah, like I was having trouble a minute ago. Now, all of a sudden, we're coming through, you see,
Right.
because it was impact. It was showing graphically what it was you were
Right.
explaining in big,
Right.
yeah. Well, how did you do a dramatic thing as far as the phone company was concerned? I mean, that's more emotional. I look at my bill each month.
And have a fit, right.
Yes.
Well, we did all kinds of things, from petition drives to, I don't know, you know, the phone companies' pleadings for further rate increases go on all the time. Every year there's a new story. But mostly what you do is get to the economics of it. You dig into their case, you break it down, you put in affirmative evidence that's constructive, and you cut an awful lot of money off. Over the years, we figured out a couple of years ago, that we have saved customers in California about $7 billion. B with a billion, right? We talk big money in this industry. We don't even look at $1 million worth of expenses. Really. You know, there are hundreds of millions of dollars involved.
But it seems to me that I always related the phone company most of all to your work, but that wasn't the only utility that you touched or are touching now. What's happening?
Oh, heavens, no. No. We got into PG&E. We represented customers in Southern California, Southern California Edison, SoCal Gas, General Telephone. We've been involved in Diablo Canyon.
In what way there? Well, PG&E.
Well, PG&E. We objected to that $7 billion they wanted for Diablo Canyon. We appealed the final decision, which I think was a sellout by the PUC, that guarantees PG&E huge revenues for the next 20 years, and we're going to be paying for that. So by the end of that, we will have paid for the whole plant, even though they have admitted fault on 2 huge building errors. The CETA program came in, the federal program to train workers. Well, I was training lawyers in utility law. There was no curriculum in Western United States to train people on utility law. So I went to the mayor of San Francisco, and George Moscone was wonderful.
Yeah.
I got one position from him for training lawyers in utility law. I wound up with 5.
I'm curious here. You were training lawyers in utility law at the same time you were fighting the utilities?
Sure.
Well, doesn't that
On-the-job training.
What?
On-the-job training.
Okay, all right.
And I supervised them. I also set up a school to train consumer advocates in the Western United States for the same reason. There's no other place they could go. For 3 years, I was on the Federal Energy Advisory Committee under 3 different administrations, Republican and Democratic. And for 3 years, I was trying also to get a grant from the Department of Energy to set up a training school so that the consumer advocates would be trained in the nuts and bolts operation of utilities and could perform more efficiently when they went back to their states. I finally did get a grant of $150,000. I recruited the instructors from all over the country in the field, set up a program, and we had very successful sessions of seminars. And in between these seminars, we had counsel to all of these people out in the States. If they ran into problems, they would call us, and we'd counsel them on it. It was renewed for a second term, but then Reagan came in and cut it off at the pockets.
I was going to ask you if it continued to filter.
There are no consumer programs now. Reagan cut out every consumer program around. The Public Utilities Commission is one of 2 agencies in the state that does not award attorney's fees. So in 1983, I went to the legislature to get a bill passed that would allow the PUC to award attorney's fees in a successful case to any consumer intervener. They would be reimbursed after the fact, though.
If the consumer person, intervener, won the case, then the utility would have to pay the person? Is that what you said?
The utility is the conduit for the payment, but the utility could charge it back to the ratepayers. However, under $500,000 in expense barely showed. I think it was about a half a cent. So we have been very successful in doing that because we have been successful in our pleadings. And about 1/3 of the budget, when I left, the budget was $750,000. 1/3 of the budget came from attorney's fees. This is very expensive business. Yeah. We had to hire outside experts. Now, an outside consulting economist doesn't care whether we're a nonprofit or not. That's his living, right. And he charges us $100 or $200 an hour, and that's what we had to pay. But we won based on that testimony.
I wanted to ask one of those big, those questions of what is the victory you are the most proud of which you are the most proud, and it's a silly question because
my 2 kids.
Your 2 kids, okay, all right. That's a good.
That's a victory, yeah.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is there have been so many things. It's a real ripple effect what you have done. It just doesn't stop. It keeps going on through the people you've worked with, and through the effort you've started.
I have a strong sense of ego, obviously, okay, and I'm very sure of myself. And if I don't know something, I'll find out. I don't try to say anything or do anything that I don't really have the facts on. But yes, it does make me feel good. I am an optimist, though. If I weren't an optimist, I'd never be able to continue, because you don't always win. You frequently lose, but you can't sit back and nurse your wounds. You have to go on, because there are other things coming up that need your attention. Yeah.
The next step. This award that we're talking about tonight, I mean, the fact that you are now a member of the Marin Women's Hall of Fame, salutes women for things they've done.
I'm proud of that.
I was going to say, is this I don't suppose it was easier or more difficult because you're a woman, because you are unique in yourself. But what sort of things came up that might have been easier if you hadn't been a woman?
Oh yes, it was harder being a woman. Here I was, the only woman in the hearing room in the early days, and they didn't know what to make of me.
There she is again.
Yeah, right. But you bet it was hard. But I didn't let that bother me. Yeah, I'm used to working hard. I've worked hard all my life.
Yeah. What other obstacles have you faced?
Let me tell you, I got over that obstacle pretty darn fast. I only had to cross-examine a couple of their officers a few times, and they had profound respect for me after that, so they didn't give me any more lip. Some of their PR people may have tried, but I made it a point of befriending all the reporters, servicing them as much as I could with any kind of question, anytime, not only when I wanted to get their attention. And I did that, and I think they all appreciated that. So, you know, you have to work all of that.
Yeah, you take those steps as they come up. You've indicated that. Did you become friends with any of the people in the utilities industry? Are any of them nice people?
Well, I'll tell you, they had a roast for me. I think it was last year. There were 350 people that were there. The whole utility department from the Southern California Utilities came up, and the same from PG&E and the telephone company. And all I could say was, I guess they really wanted to be sure I was really retiring. I had friends on the inside too, and they would tell me that any time a new policy came up, they would always say, what will Sylvia do or say about this? So I know I did worry them.
Yeah. Sylvia, it's always so nice to talk with you. I want to find out what you're doing now. Just a moment ago, you referred to retiring. You officially retired in, I think, last year, but you haven't retired. What do you...
Well, I did retire, but, and I went to the meeting of the Board of Supervisors, and I don't know whether they were getting nervous seeing me sitting there and not knowing what I was there for or what. But
the Marin County Board?
Marin County Board. But one day, the chairman called me into his office and asked me if I would represent the board, the county, and its consumers on cable TV legislation. And I said, well, I don't know anything about cable TV. And they said, no, but you'll learn that fast enough. You know enough about lobbying. So I thought about it for a week, and I decided I would do it on a part-time basis. So I'm doing that, and it's very exciting and very complicated. I didn't realize that the cable industry was that complicated, but it sure is.
Well, we have all these cable stations that come into our set. Why do we need to be protected? What are you doing to help us here?
Well, cable is really a monopoly. There are very few communities in the country that are served by more than one cable company. Well, without competition, in the absence of regulation, they were successful in removing regulation in 1984. They can raise rates at will, they can do whatever they want. And the reason the board called me in was they got so many complaints on frequent and steep rate increases and bad
just
service.
Arbitrary,
and so
just all,
right. So that's the reason the Congress took it up last year too, is because the complaints are coming in from all over the country.
So many people say, but I'm just one person. what I want or what bothers me, I can't make any impact on it. Somebody like
true.
Sylvia Siegel can, but I can't.
Sylvia Siegel can't do a damn thing unless she has a folder of letters from constituents to show the legislator that there's great interest in his district in this issue. That's the only thing that really sparks them. I can, you know, raise the cry, but I think my value will be in getting people to put into this process. Unless we do that, our democracy is going to go down the drain. Look at the last election.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you in general how you feel these days about the way things are going. Now, you're working to protect us from cable
Abuses.
warlords
Yeah.
or whatever phrase you want to use. But in general, are you optimistic these days or pessimistic about
The political situation?
And-
I really think, I've never been active in politics, you know.
well, it doesn't sound
No,
that way.
And in my role, I couldn't be. I had to be impartial.
Okay.
But I'm a Democrat.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
But I think the results of the last election were very depressing in a way. And I know the young people are kind of turned off, but you can't be. I think we've got to turn it around. We are the guiding light for all of the countries in Eastern Europe, for heaven's sakes, all around the world. And we can't let the failure and the corruption of some legislators keep us from the polls and doing what we have to do. If the politicians who are in office aren't good, you get rid of them fast. And that's what we have to do. But that takes everybody's vote.
That's right, but it takes a catalyst. It takes a Sylvia Siegel or maybe some other individuals to pull people together.
If I were 20 years younger, I would run for political office.
Would
but
you?
Yeah.
Well, any political office or governor?
For a legislative office, right. But I
Are you
can't
sorry?
do that.
Are you sorry you didn't do it 20 years ago?
Oh, no.
No, you did the right thing.
I had a wonderful time. If I didn't like a job, I wouldn't stay on it. You work too hard and too long on your job. I think anybody who stays on a job they don't like is nuts.
Yeah, but most people don't think they can take that chance, but you're a risk taker. If we were to establish a slogan, or if you were to write your own slogan, a descriptive phrase for your life and what you'd like to see other people do, this is a big order. So your philosophy of life in 25 words or less, what would it be?
In one word,
One word?
enjoy.